had I felt social anxiety before I started the business. I hadn't really talked to many people. I had no life experience, had no idea what I was doing. So I was just this 18-year-old kid who didn't look like he had a clue. I was, for some reason, just scared to answer the phone. And once I started doing that, once I got over the fear of something completely irrational and just did it, I realized that I'm probably leaving a lot of money on the table. And I was. I added like 200,000 a year to the business as soon as I just started answering the phone.
Good morning, everyone. We're up nice and early today with the special guest, Jason Shipway. This is episode 24, and welcome to the High Performance Management Podcast. Thanks so much for coming on, Jason. Love to have you here, and we're going to have a fantastic chat about your journey with enhanced cleaning and your transition into the online space, online education space, and podcasting, as well as your TikTok as well. So there's a lot of avenues here we can go. I guess let's get stuck straight into it, because you started at the ripe age of, what was it, 18 when you began your cleaning company?
18, yeah. So I was 1 month off turning 19 when I started.
That's amazing. And you started, for people living in Perth, Jason's from Bunbury originally, and now you've branched into Perth and hopefully Australia after, right?
Yeah. Most people can't seem to get away from Bunbury quick enough. It took me a few years, but I got out of there in the end. But no, Bunbury's a very good, it was a good launching pad for me when I started the business. Very good market, low saturation, a lot of potential there. And so the goal was always to build Bunbury up and then move to Perth and repeat the process there. And then, yeah, obviously bigger picture, going national would be great. So obviously a lot of legal stuff to work out if I want a franchise, things to look at there. And I want to make sure I've got the systems down pat before I look at going interstate, because I don't want to end up with problems that I can't solve.
No, amazing. And look, from the beginning, even in your language, it's funny. I know Jason personally, right? And you go into business where I can hear it in your language coming out. And so let's go there. Like, it sounds like you, besides obviously the experience of running a business that you learn, through life, what are some of these beginning, lessons you were learning in business that you think have kind of helped you get to where you are? Because not all businesses succeed, and not all are profitable and scalable like yourself.
Yeah, well, I think the statistic is 90% fail after 10 years. So that's a very alarming number. But yeah, I'd say it's a lot of limiting beliefs when I started. And even to this day, I have a lot of limiting beliefs that I'm still trying to knock down. So it's just one domino after the next. And every time I knock one down, I look for the next one. So I'm not trying to focus on too many things. But going back to when I started, I guess for me and for a lot of other people, one of the things that can hinder someone's success is just what other people are saying. So like my family, particularly my grandparents and my mum, they were trying to talk me out of doing what I was going to do, and they just wanted me to go and get a job. And so I was very conflicted about what I wanted to do, because I had this kind of desire and this belief in myself that I could start a business, and I had the vision, but I couldn't help other people see it. And so I think that's the toughest thing, just trying to get other people on board. But at the end of the day, it really is just you in this journey.
That's awesome. Let's go back there. So you're high school? You're on the traditional path, probably go to uni and then get some type of high paying, and you've got this vision. Where did this vision start for having your own business?
So very, very young, I was always kind of doing stuff here and there. As young as 12, I had like a Minecraft server that I used to make money with online, and I would be sitting on the couch in the living room, and my dad would come in and he'd say, "Oh, $3,500 just hit my PayPal account." And I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's so-and-so. He just bought some rank in my Minecraft server." And I did that for a while. And so my dad, he's always been a big supporter of what I've been doing. And he always kind of saw, I guess, the potential for me to do something for myself. And my dad was a big proponent for me getting into business. He used to take me to a lot of seminars with him because he's a business owner too. And so it was my mum it was kind of hard to convince her what I was doing. But anyway, I tried drop shipping, I tried e-commerce, I tried a whole bunch of things, and I never really found any success up until I was 18. So from 14 to 18, I was practically doing nothing. I dropped out of school at 14, out of year 9. And for those years, I was just playing soccer. I was playing soccer at a pretty high level. I played for the Joeys, and I played for the Skillaroos, which is the WA state team. And so my parents weren't really pressuring me to do anything at that stage because they thought, oh yeah, he'll just go on that pathway. And then, if I wanted to, I could have played college soccer or something along those lines. And then I got to a point where I was 18 and I was kind of transitioning out of soccer because of a lot of injuries. And then my grandparents, who I was living with at the time, started pressuring me to get a job. And so I was like, okay, I applied to as many places as I could find in Bunbury. I found a few places that I thought would actually be a good fit for me. And I went in for a couple of interviews, completely screwed those up because I had no people skills at that point and I had no idea how people wanted me to talk. And so I'm 18, can't get a job. Family's pressuring me to do something. So I said, okay, I'm just going to go all in and start some sort of business. And I'm thinking about what I can do. I don't have any money. I don't have any skills or experience in anything. So I weighed up 3 options. I said, I can do car detailing, I can do lawn mowing, or I can do cleaning. And I just kind of did like a Venn diagram and a pros and cons list for each of the things. I was like, car detailing requires a lot of knowledge. I don't really know anything about cars or how to take care of them. Lawn mowing is like a higher startup cost. It can be seasonal with the weather. And so I'm like, house cleaning seems like the most logical fit for me because it's cheap. I don't need to know anything. And there's recurring revenue, which is something that I was really, really interested in. I've always wanted to own a business that had recurring revenue where you get one customer and you make 10,000 a year, you get a second one, you double that and you just keep going and going without having to look back and try to fill in the gaps where people drop off. So that's kind of how I started. The first 3 months were really tough because it was just as COVID hit in March 2020. And so I was handing out flyers into people's letterboxes. And this is the time where the news and the media is telling everyone, don't touch your mail with your bare hands because you can get coronavirus. And so I'm handing out flyers and people are thinking that my flyers advertising my cleaning service are going to give them coronavirus. So that wasn't a great message to market match at the time. But after 3 months, I figured it wasn't working. So I switched the media and I went on to Facebook. I ran a competition, which did really, really well. I got around 20 to 25 recurring clients from this one competition, and it ended up being worth just over 100,000 a year. So
wow,
the first 3 months I made $27. I did one clean for $27. That was like a get in the door offer. And then after that, that's when things really took off.
Well, so you went from 3 months making $27 to then after that competition you got 25 clients that netted you about 100 grand.
Yeah, and the thing was, those 3 months, I was enjoying every moment of it. And then I did this. So I had this offer because I just wasn't getting anything. And it was a $27 entire house clean. And to put that into perspective, this clean took me 4.5 hours. So I don't know what that hourly rate is, but it's far below the minimum wage.
Could have got
so even when I did that, I was stoked with it. Yeah. I was stoked with that because I finally got in the door and did the thing I wanted to do. And so that gave me confidence that I could get a client. I just needed to get the messaging and the offer right. And so, yeah, and then after that, that's when I launched the competition and, organic kind of virality took over that and the compounding effect where someone would enter. I had a second page on the competition that said, if you invite 3 friends to enter as well, you can get a 300% better chance at winning. And so one person would join, invite 3 friends, and those 3 friends would maybe invite people as well. And it got, I think, about 1,000 entries.
And so what was the competition though? Like,
I tried 2. So the first one was to win an entire year of house cleaning. And to my surprise, no one entered it. So I was like, okay, maybe it just doesn't seem realistic or attainable to people. So I dropped it down to a 1-month cleaning competition, which is 4 weekly cleans. And that's what really blew up. So I'm glad I gave that away, not a year.
Where did you get that? Because I'm not in the space either, but I've not even heard of that. Like, who were you modeling at the time? Like, where did that come from? Was it just like popped in your head? Did you have mentors, or like, did you read it somewhere in a book, or what was the idea for
Yeah,
behind
I
that?
remember sitting in a little mastermind that my dad took me to, and the idea of a competition was brought up. And I remember the next day I was on Facebook and I saw a competition from Crown Casino Perth, just offering I think it was a weekend stay at Crown Towers. And it had like 10,000 likes and thousands of comments. And I was like, they didn't pay anything to get this engagement. All they're doing is giving away a room, which is going to stay vacant anyway. So I'm like, I can do something like this for myself. And, I had no money at the time. So I really needed that organic push to get
Yeah.
things going.
And so you had about 1,000 people go through this competition.
I think so. Yeah, it was either 500 or 1,000. I ran two different competitions, and one was 500, one was 1,000. I think the second one was 1,000.
Yeah, right. And so how did that translate to like your first clients exactly? So, because obviously one got a free clean. So these are just leads, and you'd contact them and be like, I'm afraid you didn't win, but I'll offer you, like, what was the next steps? Like,
Yeah, so it was a funnel inside of ClickFunnels that I made, and the opt-in page had obviously their questions like name, email address, phone number, and then it also had some qualifying questions. So I asked, have you had a house cleaner, or do you have a house cleaner right now? Have you had your house professionally cleaned recently? Would you be interested in getting a house cleaner right now? And a few other questions like that, like how many people live in the home,
true. Yeah.
things
And
like
so
that.
you would have got the ones that said, would you like a house cleaner right now? That's like a hot lead then. Hey.
Yeah, and the people that answered no, I just filter them out straight away. And so the people that answered that, I didn't call them initially just because I was honestly afraid of the phone. So I emailed
100%.
people, and I was closing people over email. I was just saying, hey, I noticed you ended my free cleaning competition. It looks like you're interested in getting a free cleaning quote right now. Would you be open to me coming by and just giving you a quote? And people would be like, yeah. And then I got confident at that, so I started calling people and texting people, and I closed about 25 people that way.
Wow, fantastic. And so you had this vision of doing a cleaning company at the very beginning, because from a mindset point of view, a lot of the stuff I do is creating like a clear vision. And obviously, if you aim at nothing, you hit everything type of deal. And it does sound like, based on your actions and the way you're speaking about it, you had a really clear picture from the beginning. So you mentioned earlier you had this goal of having recurring revenue. All right, that's a little bit vague because it could be $27 recurring revenue, right? And so what was did you from the very beginning have like a vision of actually how much money you wanted? And if so, what was, like, why? what were you hoping to do with it? You just want to make something cool?
Yeah, well, initially I wrote down a set of goals and I did some maths because that's all business is, right? It's just numbers. And I was like, I want to make $75,000 a year, because I was applying to jobs before that for, 40 to 50,000 a year that I was getting knocked back from. So I'm like, if I can make 75,000, I'd be super happy. And so I did the maths. I was like, okay, I need this many weekly cleans at this price point to make this amount of money. Also factoring in for expenses and things like that. So I had these goals set down from the start, and my intention was never to make a big business. It was just to give me a stable income that was kind of above average and just let me live on my own terms. And then, I never really looked back on that, and I never kept track of my progress. And then one day I found that notepad that I wrote all my goals down, and I'd written these goals down for like a 2-year kind of timeline. And by the time I'd gone past that, I'd like 10x every single goal I had.
Wow. And what would you say is like the one or two main contributing factors to that success? Because I know you mentioned limiting beliefs. It does sound like you probably had some harsh limiting beliefs about yourself that do require, like from my experience, some courage to overcome them. So you're probably maybe dealing with a bit of stress and anxiety through that period too, right? Like maybe, what was one or two big contributing factors to your success in that early phase?
Yeah, definitely a lot of anxiety.
Yeah,
I had a lot of, I felt social anxiety before I started the business. I hadn't really talk to many people. I had no life experience, that sort of thing. And so initially when I was going face to face and giving people quotes and talking to them, I just had no idea what I was doing. And I was so scared that people wouldn't take me seriously because I was just this 18-year-old kid who didn't look like he had a clue. And once I started doing that, once I got over the fear of something completely irrational and just did it, I realized that people were receptive to me and that I was actually just worried about nothing the whole time, because the first quote I ever did, I got them and it felt like it was easy, and it just got better and better over time. So I'd say that was the biggest limiting belief that I had, and all I had to do was take action to realize that it wasn't that. Same sort of thing happened a bit later on in the business, where I was, for some reason, just scared to answer the phone because I didn't want to answer the phone and have someone berate me or find out some bad news and just be stuck on the line with someone. And again, completely irrational. But one day I just said to myself, like, I just need to answer the phone because I'm probably leaving a lot of money on the table. And I was. I added like 200,000 a year to the business as soon as I just started answering the phone, because up until then I was just doing online quotes and that sort of thing. And my manager said the same thing when I put her in her role. She answered the phone way more than I did. She would answer every call. And then the couple of months after I put her in, she added another 6 figures a year to the business. So just really, really irrational things. And I would say that was the biggest one. And then, yeah, I can't really think of anything else starting out that held me back, because I was really committed to making it work. That's why I stuck at it for the 3 months where I wasn't making money. I just constant bashing my head against the wall, but also
that's really a good point, actually. So you just said you're just really committed. Commitment's the biggest thing. Without commitment, you are flipping and flopping between different paths. What was kind of your strategy with fostering that commitment? Where did you? Because it's not something you can just do unless you're in a lot of pain. So kind of what was the driving factor to be committed? Is it just I don't want to work a normal job, like what was that?
Well, I wasn't opposed to working a normal job, because even to this day, I've never worked a job, so I have no idea what it's like. So it wasn't really that. I think it's more the external factors. I had, family telling me that I shouldn't do it or couldn't do it. So that was one motivating factor. And then I just wanted to be able to be a bit more independent, because at that point, I was 18. I'm technically an adult, but I'm still relying on my grandparents to cook me food, to house me. And I just wanted to kind of break free from that and become my own person. And I always had that desire to do something for myself and to own a business. I just never knew what that would look like until that day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's go forward a little bit then. So you did the competition, you got your first 6 figures. What was some of those growing pains you were coming up with to then get to that next level? And what was the next level from going from just yourself to hiring probably your first employee? Take us through that period.
Yeah, so the first growing pain I encountered was my pricing model. I had a ton of clients, but I realized that I wasn't actually making any money on them once I had staff, because I had my first 2 employees, and then when I finally ran the numbers, even though I thought I was making money, I actually wasn't. I was losing money on one of the employees and breaking even on the other. So I had to do a big price increase, get a lot of new people on a new service offering. And again, I was scared because I thought people would leave if I increased the price. And what I didn't realize was that my biggest thing was delivering on service, and I was offering a much better experience than any other cleaning company around. So even though I had to essentially double my price for almost all my clients, I had a retention rate of like 80 or 90%. And that little shift meant I was making like 20 or 30% margin.
Yeah, it's funny. Like 80%, that's another irrational fear. Like you had this whole, everyone listening to this right now, how many of these things do you have holding you back? Where you think it's you're going to die, it's a saber-tooth tiger trying to chase you and you're living in constant fear, and it's really like an 80% chance that it will succeed. Like that's crazy. And it makes you, you probably have this probably reinforces your belief that anytime I do have fear, the chances are it's probably not correct, going forward with the new stuff, which is really cool. And you mentioned one important thing. You said you thought you were being profitable with 2 employees, but then you ran the numbers and you're losing money. Like, how many business owners do you think are doing that? And what was, when you thought you were, like, what were you avoiding? What numbers were you not even looking at to think that?
Well, I wouldn't even check my bank account a lot of days because I was scared what the number would be. And I would just look at at the time I was using Wave Accounting, which I think is only available in America now. And it doesn't have all the reporting features that something like Xero or MyOb has. So I'm seeing the turnover, but I'm not necessarily seeing the right profit amount because I'm not recording all the expenses I should be. And so, like, on paper, at the end of the year, it was like 120,000 or 130. But then I went and did my tax return, and I had profited like $40,000. I'm like, what's going on? Yeah.
And then you're like, all right, something needs to change.
Yeah, and I think a lot of business owners run like that, where they just do the thing that they know they're good at and is working, and they don't worry about the numbers, which is the most important thing.
Yeah. And so you hired your first 2 employees, you changed your pricing. What was that next step? So this is all just residential cleaning at this point. Is that right? Did you have any?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I assume anyway, just because I know you a little bit, your next step was probably then getting into more contracts with, corporate style type of things. Is that kind of what the next step was? And what was the catalyst to you being like, all right, like, did you set a new goal? Like, you're like, oh, well, I'm growing, I can probably do this. Like, walk us through that phase.
Yeah, so right after that, there were 2 small shifts I made that were really impactful for the business. And the catalyst for one of those was I had a regular house cleaning client that I used to clean her house every fortnight. And she approached me and asked if I would clean her mechanical workshop, like a car workshop. And at the time, my business name is Enhanced Home Cleaning, and I'm about to go and clean a mechanic's place. I'm like, well, it doesn't make sense for me to be called this, so I need to obviously rebrand. And then I simply just renamed the business to Enhanced Cleaning Services, and that no longer restricted me to just houses. So that was one big shift. And then the other one was just simplifying, because before that, I was offering like 20 different services. Even my regular weekly cleans, I would have like a basic, a standard, and a deluxe. So I ranged everything down. I stopped doing oven cleans. I stopped doing window cleans, vacay cleans. And then I just focused on the one thing that I was good at, that I wanted to do, and that I saw the most potential in. And that was just the recurring house cleans and office cleans. So to this day, we only offer one service for houses. And it also means, I didn't realize this back then, but I realize it now, that only having one service means you can train your staff to be really, really good at that one thing, because they're focusing all their time and energy into it. And so if I had 20 different services today, and with the team size I have now, approaching 40 cleaners, it would be an absolute nightmare trying to train everyone to do that. And so those are the 2 big things that I did early on, which ended up down the line resulting in big change.
Yeah, right. And that's kind of another thing. I know you kind of glazed over it, but even myself in my own service range, making the decision to kind of, I guess, completely change your whole business model. Essentially, you're going down from 20 services to the one. That's kind of a big challenge as well. What was, did you have were you having mentors at this time? What was the big, mindset shift you had to go through to go to that next phase as well?
Yeah, I mean, by this point, I didn't have any mentors, but I remember someone saying to me a long time ago, you either learn 2 ways. You learn from the school of hard knocks or the school of prior learning. So before that, I was learning from the school of prior learning from other people who had done the thing. And at that point in time, I was on my own and I was learning from the school of hard knocks. So I was just doing stuff and reacting to situations and things that were going on. And so, yeah, I had no real guidance at that point. I just had a gut feeling about where I wanted to take the business. And I knew that it would result in short-term hindrance for long-term gains. So it was like a delayed gratification, where I knew that by getting rid of 80% of my services, I would basically halve the money I'm making, because a lot of that stuff was like half my business that I was doing. But I knew that later on it would pay off because I just wanted to master this one thing and control that sector of the market.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so you got your first corporate job, mechanic workshop. And what was the next step to that? Obviously, you had to overcome that fear of making phone calls. And now you're at a next stage where you probably got a bit of word of mouth, but if you did want to grow that core part of that business, you're going to have to go do a bit of door knocking. So how did you start to expand that part of the market, in that corporate services, office building style?
Yeah, so when I started doing that clean, the first thing I realized is just how easy it was. I think I was charging $140 a week and it was taking an hour. So I'd gone from making about 45 to 50 an hour to making essentially 150 an hour almost. And that was the big light bulb moment that I had where I was like, there is a lot of upside potential to this. And so I really started to change all of my marketing, just the way it looked, to feel more geared towards corporate as well. But I also didn't want to kind of drift away from the residential side as well. So I started doing a lot more Facebook stuff. And after a while, I realized Facebook is really good for the residential market. It's not doing much for me for businesses. And so I thought, people who want office cleaners are usually just going straight to Google. It's going to be someone in reception at a medical center has been told by their boss they need to get a new cleaner. So the receptionist just Googles office cleaners near me. And so once I realized that, I was like, okay, I want to get really good at SEO because I want to start ranking my business higher in the search. And I just watched a lot of videos. I read a lot of forum posts and things like that and guides. And I started to build my SEO. I did things like site meta tags. I did like XML sitemaps, which probably, I don't know if you know anything about that. It might mean nothing to you, but
not me, no.
I still don't know what it is, but I know that Google likes it. So I did stuff like that. And then I started farming reviews. This was probably the most important thing that I did. Every customer I got, I would give them a free clean if they just gave me a 5-star review, because I knew that Google ranks things differently. So they rank like a 5-star review above, say, like having your meta tags right. And so I knew that Google really liked businesses that had good reviews. And so I just built those. And over the next 12 months, I noticed that my search, my ranking in the search was going higher and higher. And then eventually I was ranking number 1 for every cleaning search term in Bunbury. And then at that point, I was getting a lot more commercial leads because they were finding me on Google. And that's what really started to grow the business.
Wow. And so you mentioned marketing. Obviously, you're probably not doing the pamphlets as much anymore. So what let me step back a little bit. So you did this new SEO ranking to get more business clients. How long ago was that transition? Because that's probably when you started scaling up and probably having like 10 employees plus, would you say?
At that point, I only had 2 employees. So
okay, so it went straight in. Yeah, nice. And then is that when you had to start hiring more?
Yeah, once I was ranking higher in Google, the leads were just coming in at a rapid pace. And so before I knew it, I had another whole book of clients for myself. And then I just started to, one after the other, get more employees in. And about a year after I'd hired my first employee, I had a team of, I think, 8. So by that point, it was starting to become a real business, it felt like.
And what year was that?
I think 2021 is when I hired the first one. So 2022, I would have had a team of 8 to 10.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously now 2 years on from there, you're on 40, which is nuts.
Approaching 40, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think we're at the timeline where you started to hop onto TikTok. Is that right?
Yeah, hopped on TikTok just over a year ago now. So it's September 2024. The first video I think I ever made was June 2023. So I've only been on it for just over a year.
Yeah, right. And so you started going, you still doing your house cleaning part. You've got your business clients now with the corporate cleans, and you're starting to do SEO and it's becoming a real business. And I know from speaking to you as well, you start getting a bit more growing pains now. So the growing pains is no longer your pricing model; it's probably the training model and the retention model of your team and managing people. Start walking us through that phase. Like, who did you have to become personally? Because up until now, you've kind of, like you said, school of hard knocks. You're just headbutting the wall and learning through reaction. What was that next step for you to become that, the leader necessary to run a proper business with 40 plus employees?
Well, I read that book, The E-Myth, and that book really resonated with me. Just the whole idea of, you've got managers, you've got leaders, you've got technicians and things like that. And I quickly realized after having staff that I was just not good with people. I was not a good manager. I mean, I'm a good manager and I can be good with people, but it's not my strong suit. So I decided at a certain point, I can't remember which exact day it was, but I just decided that I'm going to be someone who steers the ship. I don't want to be commanding the people on it, but I just want to be taking it in the direction that it needs to be going. And so I identified a person in my team that I thought would be really good at what I wasn't good at, and that's Stacey, who's my operations manager today. I just kind of saw that in her, that she would be a great manager, even when she didn't see that in herself. And so I put her in the role that I was in at the time. And fast forward to this day, she has grown the team from, I think, about 15 at that point to now over 30. And she's done that in a much quicker timeline than I could have, because that's her strength. And our strengths and weaknesses kind of complement each other. I think that's the important part in business. You want to have someone by your side that has strengths where you have weaknesses, because if you have two people that have the same strengths, after a while you just cancel each other out and you start to butt heads, because you don't need the other person, but they might be taking like a big percentage of your profits or whatever it may be. So yeah, I realized that my skill set shouldn't be in the role of a manager. It should be more of like a CEO, someone who's making decisions on personnel to hire, what direction the business needs to go in, etc.
Yeah, that's great. And now with what's been the impact of TikTok besides personal brand and helping with other connections? How has that directly impacted your business?
Yeah, so I got on TikTok because I realized the power of a personal brand after seeing so many guys make massive followings online, like Alex Hormozi, witnessing him build an audience of millions in what seemed like a few months.
Yeah.
I realized that if I just started making videos on TikTok of what I was doing, I kind of understood that I was in a unique position. There's not many young guys who own cleaning businesses. And so I just started making content. I had no expectation of what it was going to become. I was just like, even if nothing happens, this would be cool to look back on in a few years and see where I came from and what things were going on at the time. And to my surprise, I started getting a lot of views very quickly. I was getting about 10,000 views per video, but I noticed I wasn't really cracking past that. And when I looked at my content, I was making videos that were, I guess, advice and tip videos to other cleaning business owners. And I was like, if I'm getting 10,000 views a video talking to cleaning business owners, which is a very, very small market, what if I made a video that spoke to everyone? And so I made a video where I just went shopping at Bunnings, and I knew that this would go viral. I didn't expect it to go as viral as it did, but I posted that. Within 24 hours, I had 1 million views, and then it ended up getting about 5 or 6 million views. And so that was very deliberate. And by that time, I realized kind of the game, or the game behind the game. I realized how to make things viral, what things would work and wouldn't work on TikTok. And then I just kept using the same formula over and over again. And eventually it opened up some pretty big doors for me, which obviously, Koree, I've been on national TV, which was pretty insane. Radio all over the place, lots of big brand deals with big cleaning companies that we all know and love, like Sellies and Domestos and Sabco. So it's been a lot of fun, but it's also been really good for my personal brand and just opening up other income streams.
Yeah, it was Australia's fastest cleaner.
Yeah,
I should have opened with that. I missed my opportunity.
Yeah, it's such a funny thing. Like if you Google Australia's fastest cleaner, like a little box comes up talking about me and what that competition was, which is just
And
insane.
that's crazy. I think probably it was one of the biggest buzzwords right now is virality. And I know a lot of business owners are kind of being like, oh, maybe we should get on this tonk, this TikToker, and how can I leverage getting viral? I think from what I've seen, getting viral doesn't necessarily translate to more business, but taking the opportunities that comes from it, that's a whole art itself. So yeah, I'd like to go into, when you say the game behind the game, what was kind of that first thing you realize that it is behind it, or what is the formula you follow for, going viral, the secret sauce?
The hook, I mean, the thing I kind of followed was, just a hook, some sort of benefit or something that would invoke curiosity or something that could solve a problem, like in the case of a business owner, if I'm making TikToks geared towards them, and then a payoff at the end. So for a service business owner who wants to make cleaning content or like a lawnmower or something, you would have the hook, which is like a really, really dirty lawn or house. Then you would have the build up and then the payoff at the end, which is obviously like the before and after. And so you just need to, obviously the algorithm favors attention because attention is a currency these days, one of the most valuable currencies we have. And so as long as you can engage a viewer up until the very end of a video or as close to the end as you can, the algorithm just pushes it out to more and more people, and that compounds. So a lot of people get that wrong, where the first 3 seconds of the video is just plain boring. I guess I see it a lot with, there's other cleaners on TikTok, and like I scroll through it and I see one of their videos pops up, and the first 3 seconds, it's like nothing happens. So I just scroll past it. Whereas my videos are really punchy. From the millisecond you open my video, like I'm speaking, it's got to be very, very punchy, very quick. And as long as you can just keep that engagement, the views will start to come in, even if you're not really talking about anything of value, which is the other thing I kind of want to get into as well. It's really hard to be original when you make content. So like you would know as kind of a fitness guy that there's all these personal trainers out there, all these dietitians that are on TikTok, and they all say the exact same thing as each other, thinking that they're going to go viral, when the thing they need to focus on is their business, which is something I want to get back to. Like if people who think they need to go on TikTok and get viral and get big to make their business better are completely wrong. I don't get much business from TikTok. I use it for different things. And so when I got onto TikTok, I was already at the $250,000 a year mark before I even started making that stuff.
Yeah.
So the people who think that TikTok or Instagram or Facebook is going to be the savior to their business and get them where they want to be, it's complete fallacy. They just need to get better at the things they're doing in their business now, like generating leads and sales, and have to realize that, especially in saturated markets like the fitness industry and things like that, that everyone's heard everything you can tell them. So if you're going to make content, if you can't be original, which in most cases you can't be, you just need to have a fun personality, which is a very slow burn. You build up a core audience over time.
Yeah, no, that's I've seen that. And I think that goes into, the reason why you might want to do a personal brand. So it's not about virality, as you said. It's more about like actually having the business that works. Building a personal brand, how do you think that's going to change things? Because I see it a lot now. Like I work a lot in the corporate space, big companies, Fortune 500, whatever. And a lot of these guys now, it's all founder-led. Like even Elon Musk, like his personal brand is just up there. It's crazy what he's doing. And obviously he's still working a lot behind the scenes. But where do you see that connecting with enhanced cleaning, having Jason Shipway, personal brand, like how do you see that? Is that more about increasing trust? Is that, you can't really quantify it almost, like from a sales point of view, like it's, I don't know, you can't find, is it just a point of interaction? Where do you see personal brand impacting, as we go further in the future? Yeah,
well, you made a good point about CEOs and personal brand these days. I think the pioneer of all this personal brand stuff was Steve Jobs, really. If we look back, like if Steve Jobs was alive today, he'd be all over TikTok and Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. And I think that's going to be like the biggest shift we see going into 2025 as well, as we see more of the faces of companies out there. And in my case for TikTok, I don't really use it as anything to benefit Enhanced, because I know that Enhanced runs without TikTok. I don't need it. We already have systems in place and stuff like that. But it's a good top of funnel content where people can just engage with it. You can pop up on their feed every couple of days and stay at the top of their consciousness. But beyond that, it's really just for my own personal endeavors, like doing the brand collaborations, doing my school community now, which is all sourced from TikTok. And so I was never expecting to get anything from Enhanced by doing the TikTok, even though inadvertently, sure, we do get some leads, but like you said, it's not something we can track or really incentivize to any sort of degree.
I think Grant Cardone does it so well. He's been talking about it for years, being omnipresent.
Omnipresent, yeah.
Yeah, and you even mentioned it in the language, being in their consciousness. Like it's we live in that world where you are a consumer or a creator, and I think I can see how the benefits of being having a personal brand out there, and just again, you can't really measure it, but if you are the first person, it's almost like mental SEO, right? Like, if you're there, you can't put a price on that almost. But again, by the sounds of it as well, like just analyzing your own language with what you're talking about, you're going down that path, being in people's consciousness. And like, have you got, what are your new goals? Like what's the new thing? Obviously it's shifted from just making 75 grand now because you couldn't get a job and you had a bit of chip on your shoulder to, I want to build. It sounds like you love building stuff, which is awesome as well. What is it now? What's the big vision?
Well, I think you might be the same as me, where you'll have a conversation with someone who's doing really well, and you're like, "Wow, I can take something away from that, and I can use that for myself." I had a light bulb moment when I was speaking to my friend Michael, who I think you may know of.
Yeah,
he's got a big tutoring franchise business. He's only 25 and he's sold about 50 franchises Australia-wide. And to me, like, that's insane. I can't fathom that sort of growth, or even just creating one franchise. And so after speaking to him, I kind of had that moment where I was like, I have a great system now, and I have a great business that is packaged up and runs without me. I could sell this opportunity to other people who, want it more than me. And so I'm thinking about franchising on the horizon. I'm talking to some people. I've been approached by 2 angel investors who have, even before I thought about franchising, they approached me and said, "Hey, why don't you franchise this?" And what's interesting is when I talked to these 2 angel investors, they weren't interested in the fact that, like, they thought I had a really good business or something that other businesses didn't already have. The thing that they both said in isolation to each other was that I'm young and have the energy to do it, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, that is interesting. Yeah.
And when I asked them about it, I was like, because it piqued my interest. I was like, so is that the main thing that you're looking at? Is just someone who's young and hungry? And they were like, well, if we look at the franchise market now, most people who own franchises are older, in the 50s, 60s. I mean, look at Jim's cleaning, Jim's mowing. He's a much older guy. And so he would definitely have a lot less energy than when he did 40 years ago. And so that was really interesting to find that these big investors who could potentially pump millions into a new venture, that's the main thing they look at, is someone's energy and vitality.
And that works really well with kind of even my philosophy about high performance is not just one area. You do need, your mental game to be on. You need to have that focus, that drive, which you can develop intrinsically, having the right people around you, but also your health and things like that. And I know you mentioned a little bit of, the anxiety you've had to deal with, which I think comes naturally with a lot of high achievers. Like most of the guys I work with and all of our friends, they don't think they're good enough. And that's actually what makes them be better. And so, yeah, maybe take us through a bit of your struggles with that and how, because I know you mentioned a lot about your energy levels and over the time, but I think you've started to get that back on track now. What have you found? You're talking about energy and vitality with these angel investors. How have you felt about optimizing that now, growing to this new stage, which requires more of you?
Yeah, I think I'm at the point in my journey where I'm focused less on wealth and more just going back into my health because, there's really three pillars of life, and that's your health, wealth, and relationships. And I believe that entrepreneurs, they aim for the money first, and once they've made it, they realize that all of this is nothing without their health and their vitality, and so they double down on their own health. And obviously relationships is kind of a byproduct of that as well. When you're working on yourself, it's going to be better for the people around you and better for your interpersonal relationships. So, and that really kind of sparked something in me as well when I started talking to these angel investors, is that I really do need to focus on my own health, especially as someone who is now at the helm of a ship that has a lot of people on it. I need to be showing up every day, positive, in a peak mental state. And even if I'm not feeling the best, I need to show up to work or show up for the people around me, acting and looking like I'm at the top of my game, because it's going to bring other people down when you have that energy. And so I think you really hit the nail on the head as well when you said a lot of people kind of have these self-doubts. I read somewhere like the three common traits of high-level successful people is that they have a high inflated sense of ability, but they have very high ambition, but they also have a crippling like inferiority complex. So they think that they're the best, but at the same time they think they can't do it. And it's like
they're never good.
it's a weird paradox, but like that's like everyone in business. Like I believe that I'm really, really good at what I do. I don't think there's anyone better than me at growing a cleaning business. But at the same time, I have these moments where I'm like, what if it all just comes crashing down tomorrow? What if this happens? What if that happens? And I have to catch myself when I think these things, because it's irrational. It goes beyond logic, because I have to look at the situation I'm in now, and even just the last few years where I've doubled the business every year, and realize like I'm here to stay.
Yeah, no, 100%. And clearly you've had, again, I think big things, courage, and having a vision and having the right people around you, probably the most important, even, especially, when you're first starting. Like you said, your mum was hard to convince. And I think we even wanted to talk on this now, how important it is to get other people on board. So now you're at this new phase. How is that? It probably transcends to not just your employees, but then the staff, the leadership staff in your team, you're steering that boat. What are some of these new challenges you're facing now at this scale?
Just something that is, completely impossible to really measure or manage or predict is just people's emotions. When you're dealing with people's emotions, everything else goes out the window. All logic, all systems, all processes just cease to exist. And so I'm realizing that the way we speak to people, the way we promise things to people, the way we tell people what they need to do or how they need to carry themselves, how they should act, is becoming more and more important the bigger the team gets. I had something happen the other day where we had this employee who was away on holiday for 2 weeks. She came back and she was sick when she was supposed to come back to work. So we said, that's fine, just take the week off. And then the next week, Stacey messages her and he's like, hey, when are you ready to work again? Because she was apparently still sick. And then out of nowhere, this employee who we thought we had a great relationship with, who we never had a problem with, who was always doing good work and was reaffirmed for that, just sent Stacey a very, very long-winded message about how we're a bad business and we're withholding money from her and that we're unprofessional and all this other stuff. Just completely blindsided Stacey. And what we realized is we made an oversight. She was missing 4 hours of pay from about 4 weeks ago. And she brought it up with Stacey at the time. And Stacey said, okay, no worries. I'll pass this on to accounts and we'll make sure you get paid in the next pay slip. And Stacey just forgot to tell our VA about this. And so it completely slipped our mind and we weren't even thinking about it. But over the next couple of weeks, this employee was just harboring resentment towards us because they thought that we were intentionally withholding this pay from her because she wasn't working and because she was sick. And so she just became more and more bitter by the day until it got to that boiling point when Stacey messaged her for the second time and was like, hey, when are you coming back to work? And she just exploded and was like, I'm not coming back to work because you don't pay me. And it's so unprofessional that you'd withhold pay from me intentionally just because I'm sick, blah, blah, blah. And so that was like a big moment where I'm like, if we tell someone we're going to do something, we have to do it because otherwise it's going to erode trust and it's going to deteriorate the relationship we have. And once that's gone, you can't really get that back.
Yeah. So these new challenges now, being able to communicate, it sounds like you've got to start fostering some systems, some cool company values, and how do you even reinforce that? These are all new things that sounds like you're going up against. Who's on your team now? Like what are you doing to get to that next level? Because there's probably lots of people listening to this who are maybe even in a similar spot who are like, oh, I'm having the same thing. Like what's some of the stuff you're doing to do that?
We've got a great core team now at Enhanced. So we got Stacey, who's the operations manager, and she's also just a really good friend. So we are able to debrief with one another after a big day. We've got Elsie, who is like Stacey's right-hand woman, essentially. And we've got our VA, and that's our upper management team. And then we've also got 4 supervisors below them. And so everything is kind of working harmoniously together. We've got all the cogs in place for the business that we have now. And then to go to the next level, I do need some guidance. I can't do it on my own. And that's something that I think a lot of business owners need to realize is that at a certain point, you just need to know you can't do it on your own anymore. And I used to have a great mentor, but he's since retired. And so I'm looking for someone who can kind of guide me through the next steps into franchising or licensing or whatever I want to do. And even just yesterday, I had a call with a guy here in Perth called Nav, who owns a company called Flex Fitness Equipment. He's doing really, really well. And he's someone who he made a lot of great points to me, even about licensing and franchising. And it's just the conversations like that where I will learn something really small that I can take away. And I'm the type of guy to implement straight away. I love to learn something and just try it, test it as soon as I can. And then based on the feedback I get from that or the output I get, I can change the input next time. And so, yeah, to get to the next steps for me, it's just information gathering. I like to do something called triangulation when it comes to information. If I'm looking at something like franchising, I'll talk to 3 authorities in the franchising space, ask them the same questions, and then based on their answers, I'll kind of find a common middle ground between the 3 of them. And I'll be like, that's going to be my new North Star that I'm going to go towards. And so, yeah, I think it's really just about information gathering at this point and gaining crystal clear clarity on what I want to do, because early on you can have ideas and visions. And if you don't execute or action on them, or if you don't achieve it, or you find like halfway through you want to do something else, it's easy to do that. But if you're at a point where you've got a team of 30 or 40, you're doing millions of dollars a year in revenue, and you make a mistake, it's really hard to go back from that. So I want to gain absolute, just complete certainty in the vision I have before I even think about moving towards it. So I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, that's super important. It's one of my core, fundamental philosophies is vision and clarity. What are you doing to foster that clarity? Do you sit down quarterly? Is it a monthly thing? Is it something that's obviously always evolving? Is it like, how do you know? You mentioned switching when things, you might get bored or shiny object syndrome. Like, how do you know when you are getting clear on something? Like you mentioned earlier on that intuition a bit. Maybe just touch on that. Like, how do you that sounds like that's a pretty key part in some of the new success you're having as well.
Yeah, the shiny object syndrome is something I can resonate with because I definitely had that before I started. And even kind of like the first year into it, I had that where I just wanted to go down different paths and try different things. And that was because I didn't have a clear vision. Whereas now I know what we're doing. I know that we have a really good thing going and that we have really good systems and we're doing the right thing. And so I'm really just focused on the team now and just ironing out all these little problems that present themselves, like before with that one employee. As soon as that happened, I said to Stacey, like, yeah, that's obviously on us. We have to take full accountability for that. And I said, from now on, I want you to just keep a to-do list, because I do that for myself, but I'd never told Stacey to do it. So I'm like, just download this app. It's called Microsoft To Do. Every time something happens, whether you need to do something in an hour or tomorrow or next week, just write it in here. It'll keep track of it. And every day when you wake up, check your to-do list. And every day just before you sign off, check it again to see what you need to do and if you've forgotten anything. So just little tweaks here and there, just refining the whole process before we try to take the next big leap. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm trying to work on, is just all these little things that pop up. It's like whack-a-mole. We're just whacking each of them down. And then eventually when we're at the point where I know I've got like the perfect model, just about, obviously nothing can be perfect, but we're going to try to get as close to it as possible. Once I've got that, that's when we make the next big move and I can make that decision as CEO.
Yeah, and so I think that kind of leads us into the new venture you're doing, which is through school, and helping people start their own cleaning companies. What are, I assume you've got some type of process there. What are, some of the successful guys you have come through, what are they doing that you're seeing that the other people who are maybe not as consistent or are starting? So what do you see like the 2-3 things that are like, those successful guys in your online education platform are doing?
What's interesting is I have about 70 members in my coaching community, and we have a weekly Q&A call. And it's always the same 10 people that show up every week. And I'm also noticing that these same 10 people who show up to the weekly calls, who are active in the community and consume all the content, because I can see what everyone gets through, they're the people who are doing better than the rest. And so it's just about repetition of doing the thing. And in our case, doing the thing is like advertising, hiring staff, refining processes. And so the people who are constantly doing that and working on it and learning are the ones that invariably are going to do better than the rest. And, there's people that come through, and I was talking to you about this, where they sign up for a month and then they leave. And it's like, I've had conversations with people who have even come through, and someone to my surprise said that the $60 a month was too expensive. And so she was questioning me about price. And I was like, in my head, I didn't say this to her, but I was like, if $60 a month is too expensive to you, that's exactly why you need to get involved. You need to use this stuff to make more money, to the point where $60 a month is not a significant amount of money for you to spend. And so, the thing is as well, I could have made it free, because I don't really need the money from it. It's more of like a passion project, and it's also just a bit of fun for me. But I know that the people who pay are going to pay attention. If I made it for free, people just wouldn't even consume the content. Like, I've been given books at Christmas and on my birthday that I still haven't read. But if I go to Dimmicks, if I drive myself to Dimmicks, walk all the way into the shopping center and spend my own hard-earned money on a book, I'm going to read it. So same sort of principle in here. The people, first of all, who pay are going to pay more attention. And then the people who actually consume the content, and I can see that are actively working on their businesses and asking questions, are the ones that do better. And I think as well, a lot of people are scared to ask questions. I think, I think we've all been there where we thought that if we ask questions, we sound dumb. And I think it Confucius who said that he who asks a question sounds dumb for a minute, but is wise for a lifetime, or someone who asks a question is dumb for a minute, but he who doesn't ask is dumb for a lifetime.
Yeah, that's good. I like that, actually. I've not heard that myself. That's good.
Yeah, that's a good one. I always remember that.
Yeah. And I think we're coming up to an end here, and you're hit the nail on the head with, the repetition of just doing the thing, asking the questions, ultimately just showing up, having, faith that you can do it. What's, if you were to leave a parting message to, those, a lot of people listening to this, where we hang out with them, with Spencer's group, Evolve Society, all those guys, young, hungry people trying to, make a change. What's, a bit of, lifestyle philosophy that you can give them to, really help them make the right decisions and be the best version of themselves?
Particularly with the young people, I think one piece of advice that they really need to come to terms with is that they need to stop trying to appease other people around them. I see it when I go to these meetups where there's a lot of young guys who are interested in the topic of business, and it's like they're all trying to one-up each other and trying to impress the next person, when in reality, they just need to pick something that they think has potential and just have relentless pursuit towards that. That's what I did. I was lucky enough to be in Bunbury where I had no friends at the time. I didn't know anyone in Bunbury. I wasn't going out because where are you going to go out in Bunbury? And so I was just kind of locked in my grandparents' spare bedroom, working, not worrying about what's going on around me or what friends are going to think of me. And I got to a point where I was, quote unquote successful. And then I started to mix with people. And then I was, as I started going out a lot. And it's like, if I was doing that at the start of my journey, I would not have gotten anywhere. So it's a blessing that I was in a place where I couldn't do that. But
yeah,
it's at the same time, people need to have the discipline and the realization that they need to stray away from that before it's kind of too late. And so, yeah, just not getting too caught up in what other people think. And like you said before, shiny object syndrome. Once you find something that you see potential in, just stick at it and do that one thing until you get really good at it.
Focus, discipline, repetition. I love it. I really appreciate it, man. Look, we're finishing up now. I appreciate the last little bit. Where can everyone find you?
Jason Cleans on all socials. I just got verified on TikTok, which is cool. So,
let's go.
Yeah.
Legend. Cool. All right, man. I really appreciate you coming on. That was super deep about your journey, and I'm sure there's, the guys listening, you've got a lot of people that look up to you as well. And I think they'll take that. This is a bit more of an insight into the way of your thinking, which is why I do this. Selfishly, I get to model everyone successful doing this podcast. So it's good. I appreciate you sharing your insights and philosophies. And yeah, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me, man. Every time I talk to you, I leave the conversation with some light bulb moment or just some new learning that I'm keen to get.
I appreciate it. That's why you got to stay around, fucking switch on people, everyone. You learn from everyone. All right, man. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.